Please be seated. Today we have Jesus telling yet another parable about sowing seed, and this time it is about two sowers. One sows good seed to grow wheat, and the enemy, the other sower, sows weeds among the wheat. For this parable too, Jesus offers an allegorical interpretation to his disciples in private. But like the parable of the sower, the parable of the wheat and weeds offers a perspective on opposition to Jesus, and also speaks more generally to the persistence of evil in the world. The sower has sown good seed in his field for a healthy wheat harvest. But in the dark of night, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. Now Matthew uses the Greek term zinzania, which is, in our modern language, used to represent, or rather to speak about, wild rice grass. Now what Matthew most likely referred to, however, is a weed called darnel or cockle, something that's very plentiful in Israel. Now the difference between the darnel and the real wheat is evident only when the plants mature and the ears appear. The ears of the real wheat are heavy and will droop, causing the plant more or less to bow down, while the ears of the darnel stand up nice and straight and tall. When the householders' slaves notice the weeds, their first response is to question the quality of the seed. Remember last week we decided nothing is wrong with the seed. But here we get some questions about the seed. Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? When the master replies that an enemy has sown the weeds, the slaves are anxious to take care of the problem, to root out these nasty weeds right now. But the master restrains his servants, saying that in gathering the weeds, they would uproot the wheat along with them. He orders them to let both grow together until the harvest. Then he will send his reapers to collect and to burn the weeds, and the wheat will be gathered into his barn. Now, in the clearest of terms, Jesus tells his disciples what almost every element of this parable represents. The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Jesus does not, however, say who the slaves represent. Perhaps the slaves represent the disciples or anyone who hears this parable and its interpretations. Who among us has not questioned why God allows evil to grow and thrive? Who among us has not wanted to take matters into our own hands and root out the evil in our midst? The master stops the slaves from doing anything of the sort. For one thing, it is not so easy to tell the weeds from the wheat. And for another, their roots are intertwined below the ground. Rooting out the weeds would uproot the wheat as well, doing more damage to the crop than leaving the weeds to grow. Jesus says that the reapers, not the slaves, the reapers, will take care of this harvest. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. It is the angels, not the human beings, who are authorized to pluck out the weeds from the wheat. We may find this dualism in this text a little troubling. It seems that there are two groups of people in the world, children of the kingdom and children of the evil one, wheat and weeds, and that their destinies are fixed from the beginning. Jesus says that at the end of the age, the angels will collect out of the kingdom all causes of sin, all scandala, and all evildoers, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. Elsewhere, Jesus warns that those who put stumbling blocks, scandalon, before any of the little ones, that it would be better for them to have a millstone put around their neck and thrown into the sea. Similarly, he He warns that if your hand or foot or eye causes you to sin, this is now the scandalous zoe. It is better to cut it off or pluck it out and be blind or maimed than to be thrown into the fire of hell with the body intact. This language, of course, was meant to jar us. This language is meant to jar us into recognizing the seriousness of anything that leads us or others into sin. It also seems to suggest that a scandalon may be something within a person rather than the whole person. We know that it is not really your hand or your foot or your eye that causes you to sin. Sin comes from the human heart. Can we, in essence, pull out our inner selves? Perhaps when Jesus was speaking about the angels that will come and collect all of these things within us and be burnt or thrown away, he's not necessarily speaking of the individual, but parts of the individual. Remember, Jesus said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, for your mind is set on things of the world, not on heavenly things." Now, in spite of these strong words and Peter's repeated falling, Jesus does not give up on Peter. Rather, he entrusts Peter with the future of his mission. So perhaps we should not press the logic of this parable too literally. In the words, or rather in the world, we know weeds do not become wheat. If you plant wheat, you will get wheat. If you plant weeds, you will get weeds. However, the two exist together because it is from our hearts that our actions have their beginning. One of the interpretations that I particularly like is this one. Even a person who is bad most of the time will be good some of the time. And a person who is good most of the time will be bad some of the time. No one is all good or all bad all of the time. It is our hearts that we need to cultivate, therefore, to show who we really are. You see, often we want to get rid of. That is not our job. We first need to understand what our role is. Our role is to do the will of God. Our role simply is to love, not judge. Love. God is the judge. And the thing is, the angels are those who will come and gather the harvest. The slaves, however, thought, this is a job for me. We need to know what our job is. Our job is to grow as good as we can and produce as much as we possibly could in the kingdom of God. If we consider that there's some that are bad, or not even as good as we are, by our actions we need to show how good we are. We need to show them how good they need to be. It is not for us to pluck out. That is God's job. Consider our penal system. You do something wrong, you go to prison, and you come back. Or you do something wrong, you go to prison, and there you meet your death. Consider all that is happening in this nation right now. We have teenage boys being charged with murders. That is something very bad. That is heinous. We need to question what has gone wrong. But the thing is, are those boys bad? Or did they do something bad? Is it simply that something bad entered their hearts and that is what their actions resulted in? Did they choose the bad thing? Are we going to say there is nothing good about those boys? Can we say that at this point? You see, one of the hardest things for us as Christians is to understand, realize, and even accept we are all the same. Y'all can accept that? We are all the same. In the eyes of God, we are. But the thing is, we somehow consider that some are not as good as we are. We see ourselves as not as bad as others. But in the eyes of God, we are all the same. And that is a hard thing for us to accept. Because rather than doing what we should do, rather than doing our job, we want to do God's job. Rather than growing and producing something that is needed for harvest, we decide we will judge. And we will determine who stays in the field and who needs to be plucked out. That is not our job. Because in plucking out, we do not know where the roots run. And when we pluck out, what the danger or the damage will be. Maybe there were some overzealous readers in Matthew's congregation who wanted to purify the community by rooting out the bad seed. That is always good, but that is not our job. Because really, this is not about a bad individual. This parable really is about bad choices. Because that is it, at the end of it, we have choices. And the choices that we make somehow determine who we are. You see, good and evil will exist together because we exist together. Often when we get to Lent, we talk about the devil loose. I laugh when I hear the devil loose, because the devil is loose because we are free to do and go wherever we want to go and do whatever we want to do. Because the reality is, we are the devil. We don't want to admit that, but it is true. But we somehow give the impression that there's this horned creature walking around with a pitchfork, poking and goading persons to do things. Even if you believe that there is a devil, he ain't got to do that, because he can enter our minds and our hearts, and then we become the devil. Because we are the ones doing what is not right, what is not godly or righteous. So when we say the devil loose, I agree, because we are loose, we are free to make choices. And the choices that we make sometimes are not the best choices, might not be the right choice, but it is the choice that we make. And you see, good and evil will continue to exist in this world because we continue to exist in this world. God allows us to live. Because if at the very first sign of something bad we would have done, we are plucked out, then Jesus would have wasted his time going to the cross. What then about faith and hope and forgiveness? What then of salvation? We have this time to prove ourselves worthy of being in the kingdom. We are expected to bear fruit. Now, like I said before, weeds cannot turn into wheat, or the other way around. But there is no one person that is utterly, totally, completely bad. If you believe that God exists in everyone, there is that spark that we need to allow to shine. Need to cultivate some sort of environment where we can more or less transplant that individual so that they can bear fruit. That is where we find ourselves this morning. One, understanding what our job really is. Not just understanding it, accepting it, and doing it. Our job is to produce the fruits of the Spirit. That is it. Our job is not to judge. Our job is not to pluck out. Our job simply is to show God to other people. If it is that we are as good as we say we are, let us show it. Often we talk about the good things we do and can do or would have done. Let us see it. Let our good works shine before men, that others may see and glorify our Father. That is what we are called to. When we are concerned with what does not concern us, we don't do our job. And we are just as bad or worse than those we condemn. We are not called to condemn. We are called to love. Remember, there is no one person who is bad all the time. And there is no one person who is good all the time. It could simply be the persons we consider to be bad are bad when we experience them. It could also be that the ones that we consider to be good are good when we experience them. But remember, even a person who is bad most of the time will be good some of the time. And a person who is good most of the time will be bad some of the time. No one is all good or all bad all of the time. There is hope for all of us. Amen.